Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the book Refuge and welcome to week 5 of 2022 and my weekly wrap-up of what I've been reading. I thought this week was gonna be a really low number because my channel members know this, but I haven't felt very good this week, and it didn't have to do with COVID. It didn't have to do with the regular sickness. I went on to a new medication and it hit me like really hard. And so basically Wednesday and Thursday I was just exhausted and not my normal self and not feeling great. But it seems to be working with my body now and doing what it's supposed to be doing, and now I feel very good. So, you know, sometimes we have to go over those bumps to get to where we are. But the point being, I just had not felt like filming anything. And today I have a lot of energy, and I'm going to go with it. I'm also being really brave. And those of you who are longtime viewers know that I get very irritated with my lighting situation. But because I'm going to film a lot today, I'm trying to give my eyes a rest and not use my ring light for every video I film, because the light seems to be cooperating. But if the sun decides to come out, it will ruin everything and I'll have to close the curtains and use the ring light. But I'm going to try to be brave, and I know y'all don't care about all these details, but I have some fun stuff to talk about before we get into all the books. First off, we do have a new channel member to welcome. You guys have been so generous lately. It means so much to me. I really work hard on making my memberships valuable to people and that they actually add something. And, you know, my channel members are the first people to know, you know, what's going on. They're the first people that I run ideas by, that I take strength from, and they've been so encouraging. And my viewers, you are all encouraging to me. Like, you really are. I have some of the best viewers. I have very little shit that gets thrown my way, and I'm so appreciative of that. But we have a new channel member at the Fated Friend level, and this is Renee. Renee, thank you so much for choosing to support the Book Refuge. It means the world to me that, you know, even a little bit of your money you would put towards me, and, you know, obviously the time. That's something I think of too, because obviously my channel members watch me a lot, and it's a thing. So thank you so much. And then I have a little update, because I think a couple weeks ago I announced my new merch that I was putting out, and I finally got my samples in, and so I'm going to show them to you. I still haven't received my Rake Appreciation Society one, but I will have it in time for the live show this week, which, yes, there will be Rake Appreciation Society on Crystal's channel, where we will be talking about Annie's song, which I'm very excited about. But I got one of the Book Refuge shirts in, and I really like this because it's funny that when I picked the name of my channel, you know, almost 4 years ago now, I didn't even understand the significance that, like, my name says TBR, which is so funny because a lot of you have, you know, tell me that, like, your TBR is never ending because of me, and I mean, that's really sweet. So this one is the TBR, which it says the Book Refuge, and then it says established 2018. I picked this one in a super big gray long sleeve, so it's very comfy, and I wanted one that, I don't know, for the colder days I could wear it and it'd be really cozy. I've worn it to bed already too, and after I washed it, it got even like softer. But I love it. I love the big bold letters. As always, my merch, it usually shows up in the banner below too, because once you have 10,000 subscribers, it'll like show your merch. So this came in. Then I got in one of my mugs, which I love this. This is one of the pieces of merch that is kind of for the Mafia readathon, as well as just if you really love Mafia. So this one has Lark, Cole, Riley, Darling, Aykroyd, Geisinger, and it's for some of my favorite Mafia authors. I put my water in this today, and I just thought that was really cool. And then, I love this so much, I designed the actual like readathon merch, which I'm very excited. There will be updates about the Mafia readathon coming soon. It's going to be later this spring, just because hosting a readathon is a lot of work. But I love these red sweaters so much. And this one says the Mafia Romance Readathon, established in 2021. And there's like 2 different versions of this. And then there's also a design that has like other Mafia stuff on it. So this is some merch that's available now. You can check that out. It usually takes about like 10 days to show up just because it's print on demand, which is what helps keep the prices low for it. So anyway, that is that. I also want to show off one other thing. This doesn't have to do with any kind of like merch or whatever, but speaking of the Rake Appreciation Society, Crystal announced these like about a month ago, but we just got our, the announcements done for the spring books that we're going to be reading, and one of them is going to be Topaz by Beverly Jenkins. And I'd already gotten a copy of Topaz that I ordered from like eBay, and I got the 25th anniversary edition, but what I really wanted was the original cover. And there happened to be a link for some used copies on Amazon that was really cheap. And I was like, there's no way that this is going to be like the pretty version. There's no way. But both Crystal and I ordered from there. And Crystal actually got a hardcover copy of it, which was beautiful. And I ended up getting a first edition cover with like the raised gold foil. It's in very good condition too. Like it does have a little bit of light damage on the side. That's when you can tell that like this probably sat on a shelf for a very long time because it faded just a little bit. The color from here to here, you can tell it's like faded a little, but it is a first edition and like it's absolutely gorgeous. I'm so excited to have this. Sometimes you get lucky, guys, and it feels like you're winning the lottery, I tell ya. So I'm going to go ahead and get my notes pulled up for the books that I read, and I did make it through 9 books this week, which I'm pretty proud of that. That's exciting. And this next week will be the readathon for Pharaoh Feb. I actually did an interview with Juliet Cross for Pharaoh Feb. It was just last night, so I will go ahead and link that up here if you want to see it. It was really fun. She actually gave us a few little secrets about the Stay a Spell series that you will only find out now if you watch the video, so definitely check it out. But like I said, I wasn't expecting to get through even this many books because I was pretty sick, but a few of them I ended up finishing. And also, particularly one of the books that I read, which we'll get to, it took me a very long time because it was very long and there was no audiobook, but I was obsessed with it, so I had to keep reading it, and it took up at least like 2 full days for me. So let's go ahead and dive into these. So the first book I want to talk about is Soft Like Thunder by J. Wolfe. I have my notes behind my camera, just so you know. That's what I'm looking at. And this book, I actually got sent an ARC for this one, which was really cool. I wasn't expecting an ARC for this because I didn't fully sign up for it. But because Julia had sent me an ARC of one of her previous books, I think she just sent it to me as well, and I was happy to have it. So Soft Like Thunder is the first book in the spin-off series from the Savage You series, which I enjoyed 2 out of the 3 in that series. It was a high school kind of like bully romance series, which, you know, I'm not a huge fan of those. But the first book in that series, Start a Fire, the hero really reminded me of Carter Mahoney, the closest that I've read before, but a little bit squishier. Like, he was just a little bit squishier for his heroine than Carter is, and so I liked those 3 books. So this series is called Savage You, and it is now the college years. So we have our couples from the previous series, and then there was a friend. Her name is Helen, and she is the heroine of this one. And so they're now at college, and Helen is struggling with a lot of things. And this series kind of starts with she wrecks the wrong car, and she actually wrecks Theo's car. It's a very fancy car, and she does damage to it. And he kind of lets her get away with it, but then he's like watching her, and he becomes a little obsessed with her. And Helen really wants to keep him at arm's length for reasons, and he becomes, you know, he wants to spend more time with her. He wants to learn more about her, and she very much wants to keep him away from her. He seems to be a very privileged man. I believe he's in baseball. Is he in baseball or wrestling? Honestly, I don't remember. And his father is like the head of this university that they go to, so he's definitely seen as being pretty privileged. And yeah, I don't want to like go into any more like spoilers for this. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars, and it had like a 3.5 on the spice scale. Like, it was pretty spicy, but a lot of the things were kind of like the same scenarios over and over again. There's like angry fucking and a few like almost public scenes type of situations. So, you know. And there were quite a few trigger warnings for this. There was drugs and substance abuse, there was assault, and there was lots of trauma, and most of that revolving around Helen. And now, I tiptoed around this in my review because I know a lot of it is, like my review that's on Goodreads, because a lot of it is a personal thing. I don't particularly like seeing young people using drugs, and I'm not naive. I know what happens. I remember it when I was in high school, but it's not something that I really like want to read. And so it made it kind of uncomfortable for me. And there's also situations where Helen is actually selling drugs at some points to help her situation. And while I don't like fault her, I know that is the scenario we're set in. There are many things that Helen is doing to try to, provide for her mom and sister, because her mom really doesn't give a fuck, and her younger sister, she wants her to be provided for. So I get that. It just wasn't something that I enjoyed. And you guys know that I read a lot for my enjoyment. So I just have to be honest about where I sit with that. I don't think there was anything wrong with this story. I was pretty intrigued. And the setup for the next story, I'm very interested in well. I think a lot of the part too is that not only were there like drugs and substance things happening, they were a major part of the plot and what the conflict was, because the conflict had to do with her being involved in drug situations, and that I wasn't a big fan of that. So there you go. Next, I continued the Sins for All Seasons series by Lorraine Heath, and I read The Duchess in His Bed. This book was book 4 in the series, and I was quickly making my way through. I absolutely love this. And this one is about Aiden Truelove, who owns the Elysium Club, which is a women's like gambling and fancy man club. So there are men who work there whose jobs it is to like look pretty and flatter the women and have sex with them if they want. There are certain men wearing, like, they wear flowers on their lapel if they are a, you know, escort for the night. And our heroine is the widowed Duchess, Selena Sheffield, the Duchess of Lushing, and her husband has just recently died. And while the only way for her to inherit her husband's stuff, because he doesn't have an heir, is she has to have an heir. And her and her husband were not lucky enough to produce one, and so she knows that she has a very limited amount of time where if she could get pregnant, she could pass the baby off as her husband's. And she feels very guilty about this, but also she had a good relationship with her husband. He was a very kind man. They were best friends pretty much. Like, they really cared about each other. And she also has 3 sisters and a brother who, her brother is, he's either an Earl or whatever he is, but he is like wasting their family money, and she knows that her sisters won't be provided for. So like, she will keep her title and still be a duchess, but the crown is actually going to take all of the Duke's assets because he doesn't have an heir. There's nobody. The line has kind of like died, and the crown wants the land back that he owns. So they would let her still be the duchess, but she would be a poverty-stricken duchess. And while that doesn't bother her, she's worried about her sisters. So she ends up setting her sights on Aiden and wants him to sleep with her. But there's 2 things. Number 1, Aiden, you know, doesn't usually sleep with the women at his club. And number 2, if he does, he uses protection. So while there is a scenario where they end up in a sexy place, she's immediately like, shit, he used protection. That's against what I need to happen. So we will have to see what happens. I don't want to spoil anything. I gave this one 4 stars, and it was 2.5 on the spice scale. And the main trigger for this one might be grief. You know, she is missing her husband, but it wasn't anything super intense. But I did enjoy this. It's hard to talk about it because I don't want to spoil how it works out for them, but I really enjoyed it. And then I moved right along to The Earl Takes a Fancy, which is book 5, and I was very excited about this one because Fancy is the name of our heroine, and she is the true daughter of Edie Truelove. So Edie is the woman who has adopted all of the bastards in this series, like A Sins for All Seasons, as I've said, like there's these 6 children who all belong to Edie, and 5 of them are ones that she adopted because they are bastards of lords and ladies who give their babies to be killed, and she didn't let them be killed, she adopted them. But Fancy is her trueborn daughter. She's 10 to 14 years younger than all of the other children, and she was actually a product of coercion, where Edie was going to be ejected from her home and the landlord coerced sexual favors out of her. And so she's always told Fancy that she was married to her father and that he was a war hero who like died in the war. And all of her brothers and sister, they have perpetuated this lie. So there's that kind of hanging in it. But Fancy, she has been well taken care of because all of her older siblings, though they are bastards, as we've seen in other books, they've married into the aristocracy or they've made a lot of money and they're living well, and they want to make sure that Fancy never has to struggle the way that they did. So they made sure she went to school, they made sure she has everything she needs, and they've recently bought her a bookshop for her to run. Even though it's only supposed to be temporary, because once she's going to have a season, they're going to make sure she gets a season. They want her to marry into the aristocracy because they give her a big dowry and pretty dresses, and they want her to have a life of leisure. But Fancy just wants to run her bookshop, and she doesn't want to deal with the ton who, though the true loves have bought their way in and married their way in, they're still very much considered an other in the ton. And then we have Matthew Summersby, who is the Earl of Rosemont, and his wife has recently died. And his wife had forced him into a marriage of convenience when she ruined him by luring him into a garden and having them get caught, and she's died. And he forgave her for what she did when she died, but she wrote this letter, an open letter to him, that she got put in a newspaper, basically saying that he should marry again. So she wants him to be able to marry for love this time. This is her trying to make amends, but it really makes him a celebrity, and Matthew wants nothing but. He wants none of this. So he decides to go incognito, and he rents these apartments in town to kind of just like hide for a while until this like dies down about him being on the market again. And he ends up going to visit this little bookshop, and he pretends to just be like a working man. And he meets Fancy, and he actually starts volunteering at her night school where they're teaching adults to read who missed out on the opportunity. And they just fall like head over heels for her. But the dilemma is that he knows that her siblings / she herself is supposed to marry into the aristocracy, and she knows she needs to do this because her family wants her to. And he's very wary of the fact that if he were to admit who he is, that he is an Earl, that she may set her sights on him for reasons other than his personality. And so we have kind of this like lie that's going between them, but it's not, this huge deception, because he just believes wrongly that if any woman knows that he's an Earl, that they're going to trap him again, because that's been his experience before. So I loved how this one played out so much. I gave this one 5 stars. It may be my favorite one I've read so far, I'm thinking. Well, I really liked book 3 as well. I really loved that one as well. But I gave this one 5 stars. This one is really only a 2-star on the Steam scale, though. This is really like a build-up. It was very much almost friends to lovers, too, because they spend a lot of time together in her bookshop and doing fun dates and things together before, anything more ever happens between them. So I really, really liked this. Lorraine Heath is a goddess. We know it. Okay, now we get to the big one. Now we get to the one that took up a lot of my time, and I feel very conflicted about this book. It was a lot. I need to take a drink before this. I read, on the recommendation of Ashton, who is a channel viewer, and Tiffany from Tiffany Roberts, I read The Land of the Beautiful Dead by R. Lee Smith. This is a dystopian horror novel. It also has fantasy elements. It also is kind of a Death in the Maiden retelling. It is gruesome. It has zombies. It is so many things. This book is so many things. It's so hard to explain. Yeah, this is crazy. So our characters in this book are Lan, who is a woman that recently her mother has died. We're in the land of where the dead rise. Nobody gets to actually die. If you die, you come back as an eater is what they're called, which is basically a zombie. And then there are also these things called revenants, which were created by Azrael. And Azrael is like the Lord of the Dead. He's like the God who is ruling everyone right now. And he has this city called Haven where he sits in power. And Lan has heard rumors that human women have been able to gain sanctuary there by selling their bodies to him and making kind of like a sex deal with him. Because he has a, like, it's not called this in the book, but he basically has a harem of concubines there. And he is monstrous. I would call this like a creature/monster romance as well, because he's so, like, he's deformed. He's considered like ghastly beautiful in a way, but he has like, I don't even know what I picture him as. I've looked up some art of him and I've seen him as almost a dragon type person, which isn't what I see, but he has like claws and he has, you know, big gray dick and things. Like, there's things going on with Azrael. But Lan goes and tries to make this deal with him that she will become his concubine if he will end the eaters, because she wants people to be able to die, is basically her goal. Because the way things are now, there's no peace, because even in death, in this apocalypse-like landscape, there is no peace because the people rise. You don't get to have a funeral for your loved one. You have to chop them up and burn them. You know, there's just no peace. There is a long, complex explanation for why Azrael is the way he is. And I will say that none of it is, like, justified. This is a villain situation. He is, you know, no one is all good or all bad. There's a lot that Lan has to learn, like her naivete, her expectation that she should just get what she wants by offering her body is kind of laughable. But Azrael is fascinating. Like, I don't know how to describe this. There are people's reviews on Goodreads who can explain this so much better than I can. It was fascinating. This book was long. It was like 700 pages. No audiobook for this. It was agony. When I tell you, this book is one of the most gruesome things I've ever read. It is bloody. It is gory. The things you see happening to these revenants and these dead people, and there are reasons for why Azrael has let the world be in this certain way. But also, when this book was over, I didn't understand the point, and I think that's why, like, I gave this 4 stars. I know for some people this is like their favorite book they've ever read. You know, it's just so amazing, and I understand the shock and awe of this book because I'm still thinking about it. But in the way that I rate books, this was not comfortable. There was nothing enjoyable. There was not a single moment that I enjoyed myself. But I also could not stop reading it. It was very compelling. I wanted to know how this was going to end. It does have a happily ever after. You don't understand how there can be a happily ever after all the way through it. But one of the things I always mention, I mentioned this when I read ravishing the heiress. Like, the amount of agony and strife and pain that the characters go to needs to juxtapose what their happily ever after equals, and I need the happily ever after to at least equal the pain that they've been through. Otherwise, I'm not enjoying myself. And this was a case of there was no fucking way that any kind of happily ever after they had could outweigh the pain we've been through. And some people, that level of angst and agony will just be like the best thing you've ever read. And for me, I'm like, I can't suffer this extended level of pain. And I actually compared it with Manacled, because with Manacled, there was a very long like epilogue, and like we were dealing with all the pain we'd been through. And for me, the amount of like love between the characters in that outweighed all the agony we were through, or at least equaled it. Like, I believed that their peaceful ending was worth everything we'd been through. And I know I can't compare everything to Manacled because nothing will hold up to it, but I'm just saying that's where I was at. So yes, I gave this 4 stars. It was only really 2.5 on the Steam scale. That was a issue for me too, is that there was a lot of sex that happened in this book between them, and it was all either very transactional and awkward, or once it was where there was genuine love between them, then it became fade to black. And I hate that more than anything else. I'm like, I suffered through all of this ick, and then they're like, oh, and he took her to bed. And I was like, fuck off. Give me the juicy bits. That's the least that you owe me after the shit that I've been through. And I didn't get that. So I gave this 4 stars. I can't even say I highly recommend it because it was agony. But if you're interested by what I've said, if you like horror but you want to make sure there's an HEA, if you like fucked up characters who stay bad, like, he doesn't get good, guys. He doesn't get good. Maybe you want to try it out. I don't know. So moving on to a TikTok book that I read. That's for my fantasy reads. I read Savage Lands by Stacey Marie Brown. This is a book that I've seen all over TikTok, all over Instagram, and the book was actually at my Barnes & Noble. And as I've said, when I see a TikTok book at Barnes & Noble, I usually buy it because it is a self-pub book and I want to support those. And this one was a hardcover, which is fucking gorgeous. Yes, ma'am, it is. And I got the audiobook for a sale. Like, it was on the sale. So I got it for $5 when they had their sale in January. So this one is a fantasy novel. It's kind of like a post-apocalypse fantasy, though, because the Fae, they've come out of the woodworks. They've stopped being in hiding. And now the world is kind of split between, like, human and Fae, and they're aware of each other and they're very wary of each other. This is set in kind of European, really beautiful art on this. And our heroine's name is Brexley, and she is the adopted daughter of the ruler of a city there. And she is kind of best friend / secretly pining after her best friend, who is the son of the guy who like adopted her, but she wasn't taken in as a ward until she was a teenager or a young child. So it's not like they like grew up together. And in the beginning of this book, she finds out that she's going to be put into a political marriage to better her family. And she's very fatalistic about this. She thinks like, oh, I owe this to my adopted family to help make their lives better by doing this. And then, you know, her, is Caden his name? I think Caden's his name. The, like, you know, kind of love interest at the beginning, right? Because we're about to talk about someone else. He then admits that he had feelings for her, and she's like, why did you never say anything until now? Because now I need to marry this person. So they decide to go on one final, like, hurrah together before she gets sold into this marriage. And something that they do is there's this train that will go from, like, it will bring supplies from, like, the human world to the Fae world, and it comes back and forth. And sometimes they would, like, steal things from it and like find out what is like going on that people aren't supposed to know about. And so this last night that they board this train, they find some interesting items. I don't want to say what they are. And they miss their jump off point. And so they end up getting arrested on the Fae side. And there's no way for her to get back. And so she gets put into this prison that is called the Halahas, which I think is called like the House of Death. And it's this prison where humans, fae, and halflings get put and they never come out. And in this prison, there is this man who basically, like, he's the prisoner on top of the prisoner, and his name is Warwick Farkas, and he's kind of this legendary person that nobody actually thinks is real in the outside world, but it's because he's been in prison for a while. Now, within this prison, there are all different kinds of fae and humans, and they're in these different factions, and then there's something in there that is the games, and the prisoners are in a lottery system, or they get put into it if they've caused any problems. They get thrown into it, and they will fight each other. And the winner moves up in the ranking, and you get rewards for winning. And if you lose, you die, because only one person comes out. And the person who always wins these games is Warwick Farkas. So he has, like, a beautiful prison cell. He can have concubines brought to him, or not concubines, prostitutes brought to him, and yeah, he basically like rules the roost. And he's based off of Jason Momoa, which made me very excited because Stacey Marie Brown actually dedicates her book to Jason Momoa, so that was very helpful to compare it to him. So that's all I really want to say about this book. What I will say about it, right, my rating about it, I gave this 4 stars. I was really interested. The audiobook was read by, I think it's, now I can't remember her name, but I was very intrigued by it. The thing is like, this is going to be a continuing series, which if you don't know, there's already 5 books out, and there will be 2 more or something. I don't even know. I'm not caught up on it, but I know there's going to be like 6 or 7 books in this series. So there was no like sex in this one at all. There is some very steamy things, like they're very aware of each other. Warwick and her have this interesting connection we don't fully understand. And so there are like moments of that, but yeah, there was no sex yet in this one. And from what I've been told, there won't be until book 3. But here's the thing. Number 1, this wasn't that long. And I was very intrigued by the Fae world that was introduced. There's a cliffhanger at the end of this book, but again, the first 5 books are out. It does sound like every book has a cliffhanger, which is part of the reason why I'd waited to start this series until there was quite a few books out. Because this went fast. Like, I listened to this in, basically in one session at work. It went very quick. And I don't want to be tortured that way. So I definitely want to continue the series. But I gave this 4 stars, and this one only gets a steam puff on my spice scale, which basically means there was like sexy terms and there was a lot of like dreams happening, but there was no like sexy sex happening. So, but this was good. I was not disappointed in it. So there's that. Then I got to read the new release Head Case by Onley James. Very excited to have read this one. This is book 4 in the Necessary Evil series, which I have right here. I was hoping my physical book was going to be here in time so that I could hold it up, but of course it isn't because Amazon has been frustrating lately. But this one is about Asa, who is one of these psycho twins, and I really like it because Asa and Avi, like, they literally have like a psychic connection together. And it's very interesting because one of them likes to give pain and one of them likes to get pain. And so when we see the prologue, which is from Thomas's point of view, we like hear that the parents were super disturbed because the parents who used to be their parents, they were these really rich parents, and they had the babies through, I don't know if they had them through a surrogate or if they used something like that, and their babies terrified them. And now they are some like stuck up parents, so we're made to think that they are like, they didn't deserve these kids, but they're disturbing. The things explained about what these kids do, it's terrifying. Okay, like, it's scary. They would hurt each other. Well, specifically, like, one of them would hurt the other because, again, one of them likes to give pain and one of them likes to receive pain when they were like 3 years old. And they're very psychically connected. So, like, if the parents ever, like, separated them at all, they would like scream and go almost catatonic without the other, which if you are not Thomas Mulvaney, who's made to deal with crazy kids, that would be terrifying. So like, I know the parents were stuck up, but also I kind of feel for them a little bit. So the beginning of this book, Asa and I think it's Jericho. Is it Jericho? They are killing someone. And Zane, who is a reporter, who actually has had a one-night stand with Asa, like kind of starts with them having a one-night stand. And Zane had kind of like zeroed in on him because he knows that he's a Mulvaney and he wants to find out what the secrets about the family are. And so they have this one-night stand at the beginning. Very hot. There's some primal play going on. There is like kinky dynamic play and everything too. But he follows Asa the next day and sees him killing someone. And so Asa, to find out what Zane is doing, and also because he doesn't want to kill him, he kidnaps him and brings him home. So this does have some captor-captive going on as well. And it does end up having a little bit of dubious consent, but it's mostly CNC, consensual non-consent, and there is violence and death and all that. So what this book ends up being about is there's a mystery. Zane's brother committed suicide, and I'm using quotations for a reason, because there is this game that has been going around online where teens and young adults are being convinced to kill themselves, and they're being manipulated into doing it. And Zane believes that the Mulvaneys are a part of it. But when Zane confronts Asa about it, Asa is like, we don't do that. We kill people who kill people. That's what we do. And so the Mulvaneys kind of, bring him into their fold. It's either that or they're going to kill him. And he helps investigate who is causing this to happen. So this was a really great one. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I still love book 2 and 3 the most, and I love when we get to see Atticus and we see Lucas and August, and one of our couples has adopted, or they've used a surrogate to have babies, and I won't say who it is, but they have twin baby girls, and it's kind of amazing. And I'm very interested in seeing how things work out for these sweet little girls who have all these psychopathic uncles. It's kind of adorable. So I had a great time with this book. Then I read one of the books on my TBR that I was very excited to read, and that was Her Husband's Harlot by Grace Calloway. I've been wanting to read a Grace Calloway for a while, and it just hasn't happened. I'm a part of this group on Facebook that's called like Upturned Petticoats and something, I always forget the name of it, where they only recommend historical romances that are of a 3 chili pepper or more in spice. So like they have all these rules about what that means, but it basically means like sexy times, more than 3 times, different positions, different toy, things involved that make it spicy. And Grace Calloway is like a main author on their list all the time because she has some very spicy books. And this was actually her first book. It was written in 2011. And just look at this cover. It is so gorgeous. But all of the audiobooks are on Anyplay. And so I've been wanting to read her. So this one is... it was an interesting setup, and I like the idea of it. I think the execution of it is a little bit wonky. Like, I don't think it perfectly works because it makes me very frustrated with both of them. But I knew what it was going to be about going in, so I tried to play with it. Basically what happens is this was kind of a marriage of convenience, or like a ton marriage. We have our hero, whose name is Nicholas, and he is the Marquis of Hartford. He was a bastard son, or what we thought was a bastard son of the Marquess, but it turns out that his father was married to his mother when he was born, but then he like ignored that marriage because she was an opera singer and married like someone on the ton. But when he dies, it comes out, and so Nicholas, who had been raised in the streets, who has had to work hard, who had been abused when he was young, he had worked his way up in business, so he was a successful businessman, and then he becomes a Marquis. And he ends up marrying Helena, and they have a pretty disastrous wedding night. And instead of talking about it, they both are just awkward about it. And Nicholas feels very guilty for how much he wants to have sex with Helena. And Helena is very attracted to her husband and doesn't know why he won't come to visit her. And she finds out that he's going to go to this one, what's this sexy place called? I can't remember what it's called, but she sneaks in because she wants to confront him and tell him that, like, stop, don't go to someone else, come to me. But she doesn't know how to say that. And so she's wearing a mask at this place, and she ends up being a voyeur to this scene that's happening, and she's very shocked by what she's seeing. And then Nicholas ends up actually being in the room, and he thinks she is a harlot because she's there, and so he fucks her. And she is just, like, so into it. But she doesn't reveal who she is because she's afraid her husband will think badly of her. So you can see the circular reasoning in this. That is what would piss me off. But what she decides to do is she decides to try to win him over by, you know, sexing herself up a little bit and, like, being bolder. And the thing is Nicholas does like it, but he has some secrets from his past that are slowly coming out, and he wants to protect her from those. And so he keeps pushing her away. So the more and more attracted he gets to her, the more he pushes her away. So it was a bit frustrating for a while of the book. And yeah, so I gave this 4 stars. It's probably a little less than that, but I knew what I was getting going into it, and it was very sexy, and I want to continue the series. I hear that there are other ones that are better. Just the premise of this one was difficult for me because I'm like, y'all are being stupid. Just talk to each other kind of thing. So I gave it 4 stars, and it is 3.5 on the spice scale for me. It may be higher on the spice scale for people in that group, but for me, I was kind of like, meh. There's a little bit of, like, butt play with, like, fingers and stuff. So I'm just saying, I always enjoy when that's in a historical, but, you know, it wasn't that spicy. Then I read Pridemates by Jennifer Ashley. If you follow my Instagram, you'll know that I will be interviewing Jennifer Ashley on February 27th on my channel. I'm so excited. But I've never read any of her other books except for The Mackenzies. And I wanted to try some of her other stuff. So Pridemates is the first book in her Shifter series. This book is interesting. So it's a mystery kind of, as well as, like, it's set in our world, but shifters have come out of hiding because they were in danger of, like, dying out. But the cost by society is that they have to wear these collars that prevent them from using aggression against anyone. So they can still shift into their animal forms because they have to, or they would die. But they can't, like, fight, or they have extreme pain. So Liam is a lion. He's a big cat shifter. And there are these settlements where shifters group together. And it used to be that just, you know, similar shifters would be together, but they form these, like, it's literally called Shifter Town. And all different shifters, like, band together to have this community. And our heroine's name is Kim, and she's actually a lawyer. And she's representing a shifter, I think his name is Thomas, who is being accused of killing his like girlfriend, this human woman, and she's trying to defend him. So she goes to Shifter Town to find out more information. The shifters are very closed off, don't want her there, and Liam kind of, you know, keeps an eye on her and realizes that maybe they should be mates. And that's all that I'll say. This book, I do have to say, I was pretty bored. I feel bad. I listened to this one on Scribd, and I was pretty bored. I had it up to 2.25 at one point, which I do not listen to books that fast. I think there was just a lot of exposition to get through, so I'm willing to read another book in the series, but I want to kind of see what people's favorites are. Because I know there's wolf shifters, bear shifters, there's other animals in this series that I want to try. But Jennifer Ashley actually has 3 different pen names. And so she has many different books for me to try between now and then. And yeah, I'm definitely willing to try some others. So I actually gave this one 3 stars, and it had like a 2.5 on the spice scale. There was some good spicy time, but it was definitely very delayed and then not as, like, detailed as I would like. And then the last book I want to talk about, which was a total surprise to me, I didn't know this book was coming. It was Taken by the Horde King by Zoey Draven. This is book 5 in the Horde Kings of Drakkar. I blew through this series in the summer of last year. I think I was reading it. The first 4 books are on audio. Obviously the audio for this one will be coming soon, but they're very reminiscent. This series is very reminiscent of like the Dothraki from Game of Thrones, but it is alien. It's an alien planet, and so there are humans and there are the Drakkari is what they're called, and there are these different Horde Kings who are leaders of different hordes. That's what they are. And slowly humans have been like integrated into their hordes over the previous books. But there are a lot of crazy things happening on their planet right now. There are some scary elements involved. And one of them is this red fog that is very poisonous and is choking people out. And it is all around this place called Death Mountain. Now, if you've read some of the previous book in this series, we've had some involvement with what's going on there. But in this book, we have our hero whose name is Ruin, who his horde is near the mountain, and he gets lost in the fog, and he comes across this woman. Her name is Mina, and she was actually sent to lure him in because there are these witches who are in the dead mountain, and they have convinced this group of humans that if on the black moon they're able to sacrifice a Horde King of Drakkar, they'll be able to like make the red fog go away. And Mina, who is considered a slave to them, she is considered of diminished capacity because she has a stutter. She's been abused and mistreated by these people, but she's stayed because her friend Tess is being taken care of there, so she stays. But as soon as she comes in contact with Ruin, who she is supposed to lure in, and she has this new power she's discovered where she's actually able to push the fog away and make this like protective bubble around her. When he sees her, he realizes that she's his mate, and so he like immediately kisses her, and she's like, oh my god, what's happening? But then she doesn't have time to change her mind because her people come in and kidnap him. And so now he feels betrayed by her, which, I mean, technically he is, and he plans to punish her for this. But she keeps being drawn to him, so she will, like, come into his cell and speak with him and try to heal his wounds. And he realizes that she has some powers, so he thinks she's a witch. And he also realizes she's his mate, and so he's like, when I escape here, I'm going to take her and make her my queen and also like punish her. But really, he's not going to punish her. He's going to take her as his queen because she's his fated mate. I fucking love this. I read this yesterday and I actually finished it this morning in bed because I was like, I'm finishing this book before my wrap up today. And I loved it. I gave this 5 stars and I gave it 3 on the spice scale. Oh, the Horde Kings are so sexy. One thing that does happen in Horde King books is there's usually some miscommunication. However, this kind of miscommunication is believable to me because they are 2 different species who have different, like, they just have different ideologies and different ways that they do things. So that kind of miscommunication, while it's annoying, like, it's believable because, yeah, if you're not from the same, you know, mind space, you're going to make different decisions. So there you go. Those are the 9 books that I read this month. It was a great time, or not this month, this week. The first week of February. If you want to know more about what's happening with Pharaoh Feb this month, definitely check it out down below. I will have links for stuff that I've talked about down below. And yeah, make sure you check out the new merch we got going on. Maybe there'll be a coupon code down below. Don't know. Yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.